I'm Alexis, 34 female. I live with my wonderful fiancé, Liam, in a city that's finally starting to feel like home, and I work hard as a senior marketing manager for a tech company. My life has been about careful planning and building something stable, something I can be proud of. But all that careful planning couldn't prepare me for how my own family would try to tear it all down on the one day that was supposed to be about me. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The day of my wedding reception was supposed to be the culmination of a year of meticulous planning. Not the wedding itself. Liam and I had already done that, a quiet and beautiful ceremony at the courthouse with just two of our closest friends as witnesses. It was perfect, intimate, and exactly what we wanted. But our families, specifically my mother, Sharon, had insisted on a proper celebration. So we compromised. A large, catered reception at a lovely botanical garden venue a month later. It was my olive branch to my mother, an attempt to give her the grand family event she craved without sacrificing the sanctity of our actual marriage ceremony. Liam, bless his heart, had been my rock through the whole process. As a software developer, he's a man of logic and reason. He saw the dysfunction in my family with a clarity I often lacked, having been submerged in it my whole life. My mother, a retired high school principal, still ran her family like she was addressing a delinquent assembly. My younger sister, Jenna, at 27, was her prized project and perpetual victim, a girl who had never truly been required to stand on her own 2 feet. Jenna's latest venture was as an entrepreneur in a multi-level marketing scheme selling essential oils, which really meant she spent her days posting inspirational quotes on social media and trying to recruit her old high school friends into her downline. The reception was beautiful. String lights twinkled above the manicured lawns, jazz music floated from a 3-piece band, and friends and family mingled, laughing, with champagne in hand. I felt a sense of serene happiness I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months. I'd done it. I'd managed to please everyone without losing my mind. Liam squeezed my hand, his warm smile telling me he was proud of me. For a moment, everything was perfect. That moment shattered when Jenna cornered me near the gift table. She was wearing a dress that was a shade too close to white, something I had decided to let go of in the spirit of family harmony. She had a practiced pout on her face, the one she used when she was about to ask for something outrageous. "Lexi," she began, her voice a saccharine whine, "we need to talk." I forced a smile. "Can it wait, Jen? We're about to cut the cake." "No, it can't," she said, glancing over at her new boyfriend, a guy named Kyle with a backwards baseball cap and the vacant expression of someone who had never had a complex thought. They'd been dating for 6 weeks. "It's about our trip." "Our trip?" I asked, confused. "What trip?" "My Hawaii trip," she said, as if I were a moron for not knowing. "With Kyle, for my birthday next month. I told you about it." She had, in passing. She'd mentioned wanting to go. I never imagined my involvement went beyond listening to her daydream. "Right, Hawaii, that sounds fun. What about it?" She took a deep breath, preparing for her pitch. "Well, the thing is, Kyle and I found this amazing all-inclusive resort in Maui. It's perfect, but it's pricey. And since you're doing so well," she gestured vaguely around the expensive venue, "and you didn't really get me a proper birthday gift last year, I thought you could, fund it for us." I stared at her, my smile frozen in place. She couldn't be serious. "Fund it? Jenna, what are you talking about? A trip to Hawaii costs thousands of dollars." "Only about 6,000, she said, breezily, as if she were asking for bus fare. "For the flights and the all-inclusive package, it's a deal, really. And it would be like my wedding gift from you, combined with my birthday and Christmas for the next 2 years. See, I'm being reasonable." The audacity was breathtaking. I had spent a small fortune on this reception, largely for her and my mother's sake. I had paid for their dresses, their hotel rooms, and had even given Jenna some cash a few months prior to help with her business. The idea that she would use my wedding reception as a platform to demand a luxury vacation was so deeply insulting I could barely form words. "Jenna, no," I said, my voice firmer than I intended. "Absolutely not. That's an absurd thing to ask." Her face fell, the pout morphing into a scowl. "What do you mean no? Why are you being so selfish? It's just money to you, you have tons of it." "I were hard for my money, Jenna, and I have a mortgage, and Liam and I are trying to build a life. I can't just drop $6,000 on a whim for your vacation." "It's not a whim, it's important for my brand," she snapped. "I need the content. Pictures in Hawaii would be amazing for my engagement." "Then you and Kyle can save up for it," I said, my patience evaporating. "This conversation is over." I turned to walk away, my head pounding. I just wanted to find Liam, to anchor myself back to the joy of the evening. But before I could take 2 steps, my mother was there, her expression one of severe disappointment. She must have been lurking nearby, waiting for her cue. "Alexis," she said, her tone clipped and cold. "Jenna is in tears. What did you say to her?" "I said no to funding a $6,000 trip to Hawaii for her and her boyfriend of 6 weeks, I replied, my voice tight. I think that was a perfectly reasonable response. My mother's eyes narrowed. "Don't be selfish, Alexis. You know how much your sister looks up to you. She's had a hard time lately, and this trip would mean the world to her. You can afford it. It's the least you could do to support your family." "Support," I nearly laughed. "I am supporting her. Look around. This whole party is support. Giving her a blank check is not support, Mom. It's enabling her to be irresponsible." "You always had to be the difficult one," she sighed, shaking her head. "Always so concerned with being right instead of being kind. Your sister is fragile. A little generosity wouldn't kill you. Just think about it. For me." She patted my arm condescendingly and swept away to console Jenna, leaving me standing there, fuming. The beautiful evening was now tainted. The joy had a bitter undercurrent. Liam found me a moment later, his face etched with concern. "What happened?" he asked, wrapping an arm around my waist. "You look like you're about to declare war." I leaned into him, taking a shaky breath. "Jenna just asked me to pay for a $6,000 trip to Hawaii, and Mom called me selfish for saying no." Liam's jaw tightened. "Of course, they did. Don't let them ruin this, Alexis. This is our night. Let's go cut the cake and forget about them for a while." He was right. I couldn't let them win. I took his hand, squeezed it, and let him lead me towards the centerpiece of the reception, a magnificent, 4-tiered lemon and raspberry wedding cake that I had spent weeks designing with a baker. It was a work of art, a symbol of the sweet new life Liam and I were starting. Forcing another smile, I decided to let it go. For now. The decision to let it go lasted approximately 5 minutes. Liam and I made our way to the front, the band leader announcing it was time for the cake cutting. Our friends and family gathered around, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the fairy lights and the flash of phone cameras. I picked up the ceremonial knife, Liam placing his hand over mine. In that moment, looking at him, the anger began to subside, replaced by the warmth of his love. This was what mattered. Not the drama, not the demands, just us. We sliced into the bottom tier, the crowd applauding. The caterer stepped forward to take the first piece for us, and I felt a surge of pure, uncomplicated happiness. We did it. We were married, we were celebrating, and the cake was cut. As we were feeding each other the first bite in that silly, traditional way, I saw Jenna out of the corner of my eye. She was standing near the cake table, her arms crossed, a thunderous expression on her face. Kyle was beside her, looking bored. My mother was whispering in her ear, likely a mix of consolation and further incitement. I tried to ignore them, turning my attention back to our guests, thanking them for coming. The next few minutes were a blur of hugs and congratulations. I was talking to Liam's aunt when a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. It was a sound of shock, of disbelief. I turned, my heart sinking even before my brain registered what I was seeing. Jenna was standing beside the cake table, her hand outstretched. But the table was no longer stable. It was tilted at a precarious angle. And the cake, my beautiful, four-tiered masterpiece, was in the process of a slow-motion slide towards the pristine grass. It seemed to hang in the air for an eternity before it crashed to the ground with a soft, sickening thud. 4 tiers of lemon sponge, raspberry filling, and delicate buttercream frosting lay in a heap of ruin. A single, handcrafted sugar peony, which had sat on the very top, rolled away like a fallen crown. Silence descended. Every eye was on Jenna. She looked down at the destroyed cake, then up at me, and a slow, malicious smile spread across her face. "Oops," she said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "I must have knocked into the table. It was so wobbly." She shrugged, the picture of nonchalance. "Guess you'll have to get Anath." "R1." The air crackled with tension. There was no mistaking the intent. This wasn't an accident. This was a calculated act of spite, a childish tantrum executed with maximum impact. She had destroyed the centerpiece of my reception because I had refused to bow to her ridiculous demand. Liam was by my side instantly, his body rigid with fury. "What is wrong with you?" he said, his voice low and dangerous, directed at Jenna. My mother, Sharon, immediately swooped in, playing the role of peacekeeper and defender. "It was an accident," she declared loudly to the stunned crowd. "The table leg was loose." Jenna just stumbled. "Don't make a scene, Liam." "A scene?" he shot back. "She just deliberately ruined your daughter's wedding cake and smiled about it." "It's just a cake," my mother said dismissively, patting Jenna's arm. "Accidents happen. Let's not let this spoil the evening." She then turned her steely gaze on me. "Alexis, tell everyone it's all right. Don't make a big deal out of this." I was speechless. The sheer, unmitigated gall of them both was stunning. Jenna, with her smug, triumphant smirk, and my mother, with her immediate, reflexive defense of her golden child. They weren't just disrespecting me, they were doing it publicly, trying to gaslight me and every single one of our guests into believing a lie. The message was clear. Jenna's feelings were paramount. My feelings, even on my own wedding day, were secondary. I looked at the wreckage on the ground. It wasn't just a cake, it was a symbol. It was a symbol of the effort I'd put in, the compromise I'd made, the hope I'd held that we could have one single, happy family event. And Jenna had smashed it gleefully, with our mother's full approval. Something inside me broke. It wasn't loud or explosive. It was a quiet, cold snap. The part of me that always made excuses for them, that always smoothed things over, that always absorbed the cost of their selfishness, just died. I took a deep breath. I looked from the ruined cake to my sister's smiling face, and then to my mother's stern, expectant one. She was waiting for me to play my part, to be the bigger person, to smooth over the mess and pretend everything was fine. "You're right, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm. The entire crowd was silent, listening. "It's just a cake." My mother nodded, a flicker of approval in her eyes. Jenna's smirk widened. "I'll let it go," I continued, making eye contact with Jenna. "It's fine, don't worry about it." A wave of relief washed over my mother's face. Jenna looked almost disappointed that I wasn't having a meltdown. Liam looked at me, confused, a question in his eyes. I gave his hand a barely perceptible squeeze, a signal that he should trust me. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The party limped on for another hour, but the mood was ruined. The caterers cleaned up the mess with quiet efficiency. People came up to me, offering condolences as if there had been a death in the family. Through it all, I maintained a serene, almost detached calm. I smiled, I made small talk, I acted like the dutiful daughter and the gracious host. But beneath the surface, a plan was beginning to form. A cold, clear, and perfectly logical plan. Jenna wanted me to get another one. Oh, I would. I would get her exactly what she deserved. The drive home from the reception was quiet. Liam gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The silence wasn't angry, not at me, but it was heavy with the shared knowledge that a line had been irrevocably crossed. I stared out the window at the passing city lights, replaying the scene in my mind. The slow-motion topple of the cake, the gasp from our friends, and most vividly, Jenna's triumphant smirk. That smirk was the key. It wasn't the smirk of someone who had made a clumsy mistake. It was the smirk of a bully who had just landed the perfect punch and knew their victim couldn't or wouldn't fight back. It was a look that said, "I can do anything I want to you, and Mommy will protect me, and you will just take it." She wasn't wrong. For my entire life, that had been the dynamic. When we were kids, if Jenna broke one of my toys, my mother would tell me, "Don't be selfish, Alexis, you have others. Let your sister have some fun." When she borrowed my favorite sweater in high school and returned it stained, I was the one reprimanded for making a fuss over material possessions. It was a lifelong pattern of my mother, Sharon, managing Jenna's feelings by sacrificing mine. My role was to be the stable, responsible, and endlessly forgiving shock absorber for Jenna's whims and insecurities. Tonight, the shock absorber had finally broken. "Are you okay?" Liam finally asked, his voice gentle. "I'm better than okay," I said, turning to him. My voice was calm, devoid of the hysteria he probably expected. "I'm clear." He glanced at me, his brow furrowed. "Clear about what?" "About everything," I replied. I'm done being the bigger person. I'm done letting them walk all over me. I'm done funding a lifestyle my sister refuses to work for, and I'm done accepting my mother's emotional blackmail. A slow smile spread across Liam's face. It wasn't a happy smile, but one of relief and validation. "I've been waiting to hear you say that for 3 years," he said. When we got back to our apartment, the first thing I did was kick off my heels and make a cup of tea. Liam watched me, curious. I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. I was methodical. I sat down at my laptop on the kitchen island, the sleek machine a stark contrast to the lacy white dress I was still wearing. "What are you doing?" he asked, coming to stand behind me. "A little research," I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I thought back to a conversation from about a month ago. Jenna had called me, gushing about her amazing Hawaii plan. At the time, I'd been deep in wedding planning and had only half listened. She'd been vague about the details, but she had mentioned one thing very specifically. "It's so perfect, Lexi. I found this travel agent, a friend of a friend, and she got us this incredible package deal. It's all-inclusive at the Royal Lahaina. But the best part is, she said if we book it with her, it's fully refundable up to 2 weeks before the trip. So it's like zero risk." Zero risk. The words echoed in my head. Jenna, who never planned anything, had fixated on that detail. It was her safety net. She could book the fantasy, knowing she could get the money back if she couldn't wheedle it out of someone. But she hadn't booked it herself. She didn't have the money or the credit. She had come to me, and when I'd said no, she'd thrown her tantrum. But how had she planned to secure it in the first place? Then I remembered the other part of the conversation. "Mom is so excited for me," Jenna had chirped. "She said this is exactly the kind of thing you should be helping me with. She even gave me her credit card to put the deposit down, just to hold the spot. She said she knows you'll pay her back once you see how important this is." My blood ran cold. Of course. My mother wasn't just an enabler, she was an active co-conspirator. She had provided the means for Jenna to create the obligation, fully expecting me to fall in line and pay the bill. They had presented me with a prepackaged problem, and my only acceptable role was to solve it with my checkbook. The smirk on Jenna's face suddenly made even more sense. It wasn't just about the cake. It was a power play. She was telling me that she had our mother's backing, that they had already set their plan in motion, and that my refusal was a temporary inconvenience she could punish me for. The cake was the punishment. I opened my email and searched for Royal Lahaina. Nothing. I searched for Hawaii, flight confirmations, travel agent. Nothing. Of course, Jenna wouldn't have used my email. The booking would be under her name or my mother's, but how was it paid for? My mother's card. And my mother, for all her faults, was meticulously old school about finances. She still used the same email address she'd had for 20 years, and I knew the password. I hesitated for only a second. Was this an invasion of privacy? Yes. Did I care? Not in the slightest. They had brought the war to my wedding. All bets were off. I logged into my mother's email account. It felt like stepping into a time capsule, full of newsletters from stores that no longer existed and political forwards from her friends. I went straight to the search bar and typed Hawaii. There it was, an email from a boutique travel agency dated 3 weeks ago. The subject line, "Confirmation for Jenna Maui Getaway." I clicked it open. My eyes scanned the details, my heart pounding with a cold, thrilling rage. There it was in black and white. A full, all-inclusive 7-night stay in an ocean view suite at the Royal Lahaina Resort. First-class round-trip tickets from our city to Maui. A prepaid credit for spa treatments and excursions. The total cost, charged to my mother's credit card, was a staggering $8,450, significantly more than the $6,000 Jenna had quoted me. And then I saw the note from the travel agent, right at the bottom of the confirmation. "Hi Sharon, as requested, I've booked this under Jenna's name but used your card for payment. The full amount is due 30 days from the booking date. The package is 100% refundable if canceled at least 14 days prior to the departure date. I've also attached a separate itinerary that you can print out for her. She's a lucky girl. Let me know when Alexis has transferred the funds, and I will update the payment information. Best, Maria." I leaned back in my chair, a slow, icy smile of my own forming. They hadn't just expected me to pay. They had instructed a third party on the assumption that I would. They had used my name, my reputation for financial reliability, as collateral. L in their scheme. My mother's silence as Jenna stood there smirking wasn't just passive approval. It was the confidence of someone who thought they had already won, that the trap was already laid and sprung. They thought I was checkmated. They had no idea I was about to flip the entire board over. "Find what you were looking for?" Liam asked, placing a fresh cup of tea beside me. I turned the laptop screen towards him. He read the email, his eyes widening. He looked from the screen to my face. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Jenna said I need to get another one," I said, my voice soft. "She's right, I do. She gets a cake, and I get to redo her booking." The next day was a Sunday. Conventionally, it would have been a day for a post-wedding brunch, for opening gifts and laughing with family. For me, it was a day of quiet, methodical warfare. Liam went out to run errands and meet a friend, giving me the space I needed. He knew I wasn't just angry. I was operating on a level of focused fury he had never seen before, and he wisely decided to let the storm rage. My first call was to the travel agent, Maria. I found her number easily on the agency's website. I put on my most pleasant, professional voice, my senior marketing manager sealing a deal voice. "Hi Maria, my name is Alexis," I began. "I'm calling about a booking for my sister, Jenna. My mother, Sharon, arranged it with you for a trip to Hawaii." "Oh yes, Alexis. Hi," Maria's voice was bubbly and warm. "Sharon mentioned you. I trust you're calling to settle the payment." The casual assumption sent a jolt of anger through me, but I kept my tone even. "Actually, I'm calling for the exact opposite reason. There seems to have been a massive misunderstanding. I have not, and will not, be funding this trip. My mother and sister made this arrangement without my consent." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Oh," Maria said, her voice losing its cheerfulness. "Oh, I see. Sharon was so certain. She said it was a combined gift from you both." "I understand she gave you that impression," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But it's not accurate. In fact, I'm quite concerned that my name was used to secure a booking of this value without my permission. I need you to cancel the entire package immediately." "Well, I can do that," Maria said, now sounding flustered. "According to the policy, it's fully refundable. The charge on Sharon's card will be reversed. It will take a few business days to process." "Perfect," I said. "Please send a cancellation confirmation to my mother's email address. And also, please forward a copy to my personal email." I gave her my address. "For my records." "Of course, I'm so sorry for the confusion," she said, clearly anxious to get off the phone with the crazy family she'd stumbled into. "It's not your fault, Maria. You were misled. Thank you for your help." I hung up, a sense of profound satisfaction washing over me. Step 1 was complete. The $8,000 charge was now a boomerang, heading straight back to my mother's credit card statement. But I wasn't done. Canceling the trip was simple justice. It was a proportional response. But what Jenna did at my wedding wasn't proportional. It was cruel. It was personal. It deserved a response that was equally personal. She wanted a trip to Hawaii, a gift from her loving older sister. Fine, I would give her one. I went back to the travel agency's website. They specialized in custom travel experiences. I spent the next hour crafting the perfect, budget-friendly Hawaiian vacation. No more Royal Lahaina. I found a non-refundable, one-star hotel in a less-than-scenic part of Honolulu, notorious in its online reviews for bed bugs and plumbing issues. The photos showed stained carpets and a view of a dumpster-filled alleyway. Perfect. Next, the flights. No more first class. I booked the cheapest possible tickets on a budget airline. The flight path was a nightmare. A red-eye from our city to Los Angeles, a 9-hour layover at LAX, followed by a connecting flight to Honolulu on a different airline, with a middle seat in the last row, right next to the lavatories. Non-refundable, of course. I didn't book a return flight. The whole package, the flight from hell and 3 nights at the Roach Motel, came to a grand total of $489. I paid for it using my own credit card, putting the booking under the name Jenna. I used her email address and her phone number for the confirmations. Within minutes, her phone would be lighting up with notifications. Your flight to Honolulu is confirmed, and your booking at the Paradise Inn is complete. Now for the final touch. Jenna hadn't just ruined a cake, she had ruined a moment for all our guests. They had come to celebrate with us and had instead witnessed a display of petty, familial cruelty. They deserved a proper thank you and a proper slice of cake. I called the baker who had made M. Y original wedding cake. Her name was Mrs. Gable, a sweet, elderly woman with a passion for her craft. She had been horrified to hear what had happened. Mrs. Gable, I said, I have a strange request. I'd like to order 75 miniature versions of my wedding cake. The exact same flavor, lemon and raspberry with buttercream frosting. Can you put each one in a small, individual box? Of course, dear, she said, her voice full of sympathy. When would you need them for? Can I pick them up tomorrow afternoon? It will be a push, but for you, after what happened, absolutely. I'll get my team on it right away. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with genuine gratitude. And can you do one more thing for me? I need you to make one more cake. A small, single-tier round cake. But I want this one to be different. Can you make it with the cheapest, most basic vanilla box mix you can find, and frost it with that canned frosting that tastes like sugar and chemicals? Mrs. Gable was silent for a beat, then let out a small chuckle. I haven't used that stuff in 40 years, but I know exactly what you mean. Consider it done. Who is this one for? It's a very special gift, I said, for my sister. Liam came home that evening to find me addressing small note cards. The scent of 100 tiny cakes wouldn't fill our apartment until the next day, but the plan was fully baked. He read one of the notes I'd written. It said, "Thank you so much for celebrating with us. We're so sorry our reception was interrupted. We hope you'll enjoy this small piece of what should have been. With love, Alexis and Liam." He looked at me, a look of awe on his face. This is comprehensive. They humiliated me in front of all of those people, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Our friends, your family, I'm not just going to let that stand. I'm reclaiming the narrative. And the single cheap cake? He asked, a grin playing on his lips. That's for Jenna, I said. She wanted me to get another one. So I did. It's a peace offering. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. It was from Kyle, Jenna's boyfriend. Hey Alexis, TA checks for the flights? Awesome, Jenna is psyched. But the hotel looks kinda weird in the pics. Is that the right one? Also, there's no flight back. I typed my reply, short and sweet. Hi Kyle, that's the one, it's a surprise. Tell Jenna not to worry about a thing, everything is taken care of. I showed the message to Liam. He started laughing, a deep, genuine laugh of pure delight. Oh, she is going to lose her mind. I know, I said, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. That's the whole point. The trap was set. All I had to do now was wait. Monday was a day of execution. I took a personal day from work, framing it as a post-wedding decompression day. In reality, it was D-Day. Liam left for the office, kissing me on the forehead. "Call me with updates," he said. "I've cleared my calendar." My first stop was Mrs. Gable's bakery. The sight of 75 perfect, miniature wedding cakes, each nestled in its own elegant white box, almost made me emotional. They were tiny monuments to what should have been. Mrs. Gable also handed me a separate, far less glamorous box. Inside was a small, lopsided cake, slathered in a suspiciously bright white frosting with waxy-looking sprinkles on top. It looked and smelled like a child's first baking experiment. "This is a crime against pastry," she said with a wink, "but I followed your instructions to the letter." I thanked her profusely, paid her, and left a massive tip. This woman wasn't just a baker, she was an artist and now an accomplice. Next, I spent 2 hours driving around the city, hand-delivering the miniature cakes to all our local friends and family who had attended the reception. The reactions were overwhelming. People were touched by the gesture and furious on my behalf about what Jenna had done. I didn't have to say a word against my sister. Her actions, and my classy response, spoke for themselves. The story of the individual cakes spread like wildfire. I was no longer the victim of a public humiliation. I was the hero of a story about grace under fire. Finally, it was time for the main event. I drove to my mother's house in the suburbs. It was the house I grew up in, a place filled with a confusing mix of warm memories and painful ones. I parked in the driveway and walked up to the door, carrying the sad little box mix cake. I rang the bell. My mother, Sharon, opened the door. Her expression was a carefully constructed mask of maternal concern. "Alexis, darling, I was so worried. I called you this morning." "I was busy," I said, walking past her into the kitchen. Jenna was sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone with a bored expression. She didn't look up. "What's that?" my mother asked, gesturing to the box. "It's for Jenna," I said, placing it on the table in front of her. I felt terrible abo. "Ate the cake yesterday. I know it was an accident, and I didn't want the night to end on a sour note. So, like you said, Jenna, I got you another one." Jenna finally looked up from her phone, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. She slowly opened the box. Her face went through a series of rapid-fire emotions: confusion, then disgust, and finally outrage. "What is this?" she sneered. "Is this a joke?" "It's a cake," I said, my voice a portrait of innocence. "Vanilla, your favorite." "This looks like garbage," she said, pushing the box away. "Now, Jenna," my mother interjected, ever the referee. "Alexis is trying to make a nice gesture. It's the thought that counts." "No," Jenna snapped. "This is her being passive-aggressive and cheap, as usual, just like with the Hawaii trip." I let the accusation hang in the air for a beat. "Speaking of the trip," I said, my tone changing, becoming serious, "we should probably talk about that." Jenna's eyes lit up with renewed arrogance. "Oh, so you're finally ready to be a decent sister? Kyle told me you booked the flights. Took you long enough. So, are you going to give Mom back her money, or should I just give you my bank details?" "The trip is booked, yes," I confirmed. "Everything is taken care of." My mother beamed. "Oh, Alexis, I knew you'd come around. I told you, Jenna. Your sister has a good heart. She just needs a little push sometimes." She patted my arm, her condescension back in full force. "Now, about the money I put on my card for the deposit." "Let's talk about that," I said, pulling a chair out and sitting down directly opposite them. I had a very interesting conversation with Maria at the travel agency. The color drained from my mother's face. Jenna just looked confused. "I called to get the details, so I could, pay you back," I continued, making air quotes with my fingers. And Maria told me the most fascinating thing. She told me that you, Mom, had instructed her that I would be covering the full cost of over $8,000. She told me my name was used to guarantee the booking. My mother stammered. I just assumed. It was a family gift. You assumed wrong, I said, my voice as cold and sharp as ice. You and Jenna conspired to commit what amounts to fraud. You tried to force me into paying for a ludicrously expensive vacation by creating the obligation behind my back. You used my financial stability as your personal line of credit. And then, when I refused your daughter, I turned to Jenna, threw a tantrum, and deliberately destroyed my wedding cake in front of 100 people to punish and humiliate me. Jenna scoffed. It was an accident, Mom, tell her. Oh, I'm not done, I said, ignoring her completely. After that disgusting display, I decided to take your advice. Jenna wanted a trip to Hawaii from her big sister, and she's going to get one. I booked you a flight, Jenna. It leaves tonight at 11 p.m. It has a 9-hour layover in Los Angeles. You're in a middle seat. I also booked you a lovely hotel. Non-refundable, of course. I paid for it myself. My gift to you. Jenna was staring at me, her mouth hanging open. What are you talking about? The flights Kyle saw were first class. The hotel was the Royal Lahaina. Ah, yes, about that, I said, leaning forward. That entire booking, the $8,000 one you charged to Mom's credit card, I had it canceled. Every last penny is being refunded to Mom's card. It should appear back on her statement in 3 to 5 business days. The trip I booked for you is the only one that exists. My mother looked like she had seen a ghost. She sank into a chair, her face pale. Canceled? Alexis, you can't. The cancellation fee. There is no fee, Mom. It was fully refundable. You should really read the fine print before you engage in financial blackmail. I turned my gaze back to Jenna, who looked utterly poleaxed. So, you have a choice to make, Jenna. You can take the one-way ticket to Honolulu that I so generously purchased for you, or you can stay here. But let me be very clear about one thing. The Bank of Alexis is permanently closed. The free ride is over. You will never get another dime from me. Not for your business, not for rent, not for a cup of coffee. We are done. I stood up. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by Jenna's ragged breathing. The smug, entitled princess was gone. In her place was a scared, cornered girl who was finally face to face with a consequence she couldn't escape. Enjoy your cake, I said, walking towards the door. I hear it tastes best when you realize it's all you're going to get. I didn't expect the fallout to begin so quickly. I was barely halfway home, the feeling of triumph still buzzing under my skin when my phone started ringing. It was my mother. I ignored it. It rang again. Ignored. Then came the barrage of texts. Mom, Alexis, call me right now. This is not funny. Mom, you have created a huge mess. Do you know how embarrassing this is? Mom, Jenna is hysterical. You need to fix this. Call the travel agent back and uncancel it. Mom, I can't afford an $8,000 charge on my card. I'm retired. You know that. You have to pay it. I read the last text and laughed out loud in my car. The charge had been canceled. The money was being refunded. But my mother, in her panic, had forgotten that detail. All she could see was the massive debt she had willingly taken on, assuming I would be her safety net. The fear in her messages was palpable. For the first time, she was feeling the financial pressure she and Jenna were so fond of putting on me. When I got home, Liam was there, having worked from home the rest of the afternoon. He saw the look on my face. So, he asked, how did it go? The first missiles have been launched, I said, showing him the texts. He read them and shook his head, a slow grin spreading across his face. She can't afford it. After lecturing you on generosity, the irony is thicker than that canned frosting. We spent the evening in a state of peaceful bliss. We ordered pizza, opened a bottle of wine, and watched a movie. We didn't talk about my family. We didn't need to. For the first time in our relationship, they were my problem, a problem I had handled, not our problem. The cloud of obligation that had perpetually hung over me had finally dissipated. The real storm broke the next morning. At 6:15 a.m., we were jolted awake by a frantic, pounding on our apartment door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the desperate, frantic banging of someone in a full-blown panic. "Alexis, open this door, Alexis." It was Jenna's voice, shrill and laced with hysteria. Liam and I looked at each other. "And so it begins," he murmured. I got out of bed, pulled on a robe, and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole. Jenna was standing there, her hair a mess, her face blotchy and tear-streaked. She was wearing yesterday's clothes. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. My mother was standing a few feet behind her, looking exhausted and furious. I opened the door but kept the security chain on. "Jenna, Mom, it's a little early for a social call, don't you think?" "Don't you play games with me," Jenna shrieked, rattling the door. "You ruined everything. Kyle broke up with me." This was a development I hadn't anticipated, though in retrospect, it was entirely predictable. "Oh dear," I said, with absolutely no sincerity. "What happened?" "He said he's not going to fly across the country to stay in some disgusting bug hotel. He said you made him look like an idiot. And he said he doesn't want to be with someone whose family is so messed up and who doesn't have any money." Her voice cracked on the last part. "He left me. This is all your fault." "My fault?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I thought your relationship was built on a foundation of true love, not a foundation of my bank account. It seems Kyle was more interested in a free vacation than in you. I'd say I did you a favor." My mother pushed her way forward. "Alexis, that's enough," she commanded in her old principal voice. "You will take this chain off and you will let us in. We are going to fix the mess you made." "There's nothing to fix," I said calmly. "And you're not coming in. My home is a place of peace. You two are the opposite of that." "You have to call the travel agent back," Jenna wailed. "You have to rebook the original trip. I'll pay you back, I swear." I almost laughed. "Pay me back with what, Jenna? Your essential oil empire. You don't have a job, you don't have any money, you don't have any credit. All you have is a one-way ticket to Honolulu that I believe you've now missed. What a shame." "This is cruel, Alexis," my mother said, her voice shaking with rage. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. By humiliating your sister and putting me in financial jeopardy." "Let's be very clear, Mom," I said, my voice dropping, losing all its sarcastic lightness and becoming deadly serious. "You did this to yourself. You raised her to be a spoiled, entitled brat who thinks the world owes her a living. You actively conspired with her to defraud me, and you stood by and smiled while she destroyed a symbol of my marriage. You have done nothing for me. You have only ever taken. You've taken my time, my energy, my peace, and my money, and that ends now." I continued, "The $8,450 will be back on your credit card in a few days. You are not in financial jeopardy. You're just experiencing the consequences of your own actions for the first time in your life. It must be very uncomfortable." Jenna was sobbing now, great, gulping, theatrical sobs. "My life is over. What am I supposed to do?" "I don't know, Jenna," I said, my patience finally gone. "It's a novel idea, but you could try getting a job, you could try paying your own rent, you could try growing up. But whatever you do, why? LL do it without me." I looked from my weeping sister to my thunderstruck mother. The power dynamic had been permanently rewired. I was no longer the dutiful daughter, the forgiving sister. I was the gatekeeper, and the gate was closed. "Goodbye," I said, and I unhooked the chain only to shut the door firmly in their shocked faces. I slid the deadbolt home. The pounding started again, accompanied by more screaming and crying, but it was muffled now. It was just noise on the other side of the door. Inside, there was silence. I turned and leaned against the door, my heart hammering, but not from fear. It was the thrill of liberation. Liam was standing in the hallway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He had an expression of profound pride on his face. "I think," he said, handing me a mug, "they finally got the message." The shouting outside eventually subsided, replaced by the sound of retreating footsteps and a car door slamming. I took a sip of my coffee. It was the best I'd ever tasted. In the weeks that followed the dawn of desperation, a new kind of quiet settled over my life. The constant, low-level anxiety that had been my lifelong companion was gone. I no longer checked my phone with a sense of dread, waiting for the next manufactured crisis or unreasonable demand. The silence from my mother and sister was absolute. It was a silence born not of peace, but of a stalemate. They had run out of ammunition, and I had fortified my borders. The story of the wedding cake, the canceled trip, and the 75 miniature cakes had become something of a legend among our friends and extended family. I hadn't needed to slander them. I had simply responded to their actions with calm, undeniable logic. They had written their own narrative of entitlement and cruelty, and I had simply penned the final chapter on consequences. Liam's family, who had witnessed the cake smashing firsthand, treated me with a new level of respect and affection. They saw me not as a doormat, but as a woman who knew her worth. About a month after the confrontation at my door, I received an email from one of my aunts on my mother's side. She was a kind woman who had always tried to stay out of the drama. Subject, your mother. Dear Alexis, I hope you are doing well. I'm not writing to take sides, but I wanted you to know what's been happening. Your mother has been telling everyone that you had a nervous breakdown after the wedding and have cut off the family for no reason. She's painting a very different picture of events, as you can imagine, but a few of us know the truth. The story of those little cakes you sent out made things very clear. The bigger news is about Jenna. After her boyfriend left, she had a complete meltdown. For the first time, Sharon didn't bail her out. I think you finally scared her straight about her finances. Jenna had to move out of her apartment because she couldn't afford the rent. She's living at home with your mother now, and she has a job. She's working as a cashier at a grocery store. I know this must be complicated for you. I just thought you should know. Love, Aunt Carol. I read the email several times. A part of me, the old, conditioned part, felt a small pang of something that resembled guilt. But it was fleeting, quickly replaced by a sense of resolute peace. Jenna working a real job, being forced to live within her means, my mother finally refusing to be her financial safety net. This wasn't a punishment. It was the best thing that could have possibly happened to them. I had given Jenna a one-way ticket to Hawaii, but she had ended up on a one-way trip to reality instead. It was a far more valuable destination. I didn't reply to the email. There was nothing to say. My actions had already said everything. 6 months later, Liam and I were on our own trip. Not to Hawaii, but to Italy. It was the honeymoon we'd always dreamed of, a trip we had saved for and planned together. We were sitting at a small cafe in Florence, sipping cappuccinos and watching the world go by. My phone, which had been blissfully silent from any family drama for half a year, buzzed on the table. It was a text from an unknown number. My heart gave a familiar little lurch, a ghost of the old anxiety. I hesitated, then opened it. Hey Lexi, it's Jenna. I held my breath. Liam noticed my expression and put his hand on mine. I know you probably hate me and you have every right to. I was a horrible person. Not just at the wedding, but for a long time. I don't know why I'm writing this. I guess I just wanted to say that working at the store is hard. People are rude. The hours are long. And for the first time, I think I get it. I get what it means to work for something. I'm sorry I ruined your cake. I'm sorry for everything. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to say it. I stared at the message, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a manipulation. It lacked her usual flair for the dramatic. It sounded genuine. It sounded like the first truly adult thing she had ever said to me. What is it? Liam asked softly. I showed him the phone. He read the text, his expression unreadable. What are you going to do? He asked. I thought for a long moment. I thought about the years of being a doormat, the casual cruelty, the deep-seated entitlement. Forgiveness wasn't a switch you could just flip. Trust, once shattered so completely, couldn't be glued back together overnight. But maybe, just maybe, this was a start. Not a return to the way things were, but the first tentative step onto a new, healthier path. A path where boundaries were respected and apologies were earned, not demanded. I typed out a reply. It was short, but it held the weight of everything that had happened. Thank you for the apology, Jenna. I appreciate it. I hit send. I wasn't offering forgiveness, not yet. I wasn't opening the door for a full reconciliation. I was simply acknowledging her words.